Hello, I'm Trey and welcome to another of my colouring tutorials. I've been working on this design by Marjorie Sarnat. It's one from Creative Kittens. She publishes through Creative Haven, and I thought I would do the tutorial on how I attempt to colour this boot. I'm working with Castle Art pencils for this section. I have used Raffine pencils on this as well because they work really well with those two types of pencils. Now I did the other boot in browns and yellows, and I thought it would, because it kind of like blends in nicely with all the other colours I've done. Quite a muted colour palette for this one, but the purple I use I think really jumped out after I've finished doing everything else. So I'm doing the boot now, and I'll put in my highlights where I think my highlights would be. So the top of the boot, and it would probably be difficult to see this first colour because it is quite light. I'm going to highlight the top of the boot, the toe section. And I'm going to do the highlight around these buttons, and the reason is because a lot of this is in shadow with the bow, so I'm putting the highlight here. Of course it'll get dark as it goes to the top, but for now I can adjust it. And with the back section of the boot, here I'm going to do darker, so I'll just do a highlighted section near the back, not as much on the back of the boot. The next colour I'm going to use now is like a dark yellow, pale brown. The best I can describe it really. So on this side, I'll start on this side again, and I'm going to darken in this edge, going towards the lighter sections. It's really light pressure. I'm not putting a lot of pressure down. I'm just trying to get one layer down to give me an idea of anything I need to adjust as I go along. At the bottom, put a darker section below the top of the boot for the toe. Now this section here, there was a similar section on the other boot, and that piece I'll do in purple and this piece in purple, but around it will be the browns. I'll do that in darker and that in lighter, which I'll go back into after I finish this medium brown. They're quite complex designs, these, by this artist, so quite often when I'm working on them I see little bits that I hadn't necessarily understood at first. I tend to work it out as I'm colouring, because sometimes it's just too much to see. So as I start colouring a section, I start working it out as I go along. And this lower part of the boot I'm going to do in the medium yellowy brown for now, and overlap slightly into the lighter sections I'd already put in. And this section here, because I decided it's going to be lighter, I'll put that in now so I don't forget later. Now I'm going to use my darkest brown, and I'm going to just go into little sections around the inside of the bow, just to darken those in slightly. That I'm going to be doing in purple, and that in purple, but behind this lighter section I'll do it in dark. This section here, as I've done with the other boot, I'll do that in dark, and underneath the boot, which is like the sole, do that in dark. A little bit awkward here, because normally I would turn the page, but obviously that would be difficult to watch. Let's see what I'm doing. Right. Now then, where this overlap is, as I've done on the other side, the other boot, I'm going to highlight overlapped sections, just darken them in with my darkest brown. And just a little bit around the leg of the cat. Now I'm doing this boot is slightly different from this one because of the way it's been drawn, and now the cat was situated on this boot, so it won't look exactly the same. Now that's the first layer of each colour, and obviously that needs a lot more layers, which I don't feel I need to do on here, so on camera. So I will do that. I'll do a few more layers of each of those colours and then come back to this. Now I put a few layers down of each of those colours, about 3 I think of each colour, and then I did a layer with zest, a blend layer, and then I put another layer down of each of those colours, and I'm doing another blend now with the zest. I'm trying to use baby oil and zest more for my blending because I find blender pencils can hurt my hands. You know, they tend to be a bit harder to use, so I'm doing more of the solution blending. Of course, when I use the zest, it tends to blend the colours in, so then I'll do a little more darkening, a little more of my shadow. And the other thing I decided to do as well, because I noticed if it's still wet with the zest, the next layer goes down easier because the solution is actually dissolving the wax, I think, on the pencil as you're using it. So I tend to do that a bit more now as well. I don't wait for it to dry. I'll go over pretty quickly with the next layer. It's handy for bigger areas as well, the solutions, for doing blending, because I find I struggle getting a smooth finish. And the amount of layers I would need would be quite a few, so being a wee bit impatient and to trying to save the pencils I'm using, I use solution. Just overlap a little bit with the lightest pencil I'm using for the boot. It is a very light colour, so it probably still doesn't show up very well on camera. So that is the main part of the boot finished, and it's a nice subtle effect. It's almost like a gradient effect like I did with the other boot. Now I'm going to do the purple sections now, and the purple sections will be part of the boot, the buttons, but also the bow. I'm using a pale lilac, for the highlights, so I'll put those in first. And I'm trying to highlight where I feel in the bow section it bends upwards, so that section there, for instance, as it bends away it'll go darker, so I will highlight those sections. And as the ends of the bow kick upwards, highlight those. And it's a section here where it bends upwards, I'll do that. Now it's got a little bit of line art on, so I'm going to do those darker. Use them as a shaded section. I'll do that lighter there. Now these slim sections I'm going to do in dark. I'll just add a little bit of lilac to the boot, the buttons on the boot. Won't be doing much shading on these sections. I'll use my medium purple. I'll put in some of the darker sections. Now with the bow, as it goes away from the bend, I will darken that in, overlapping a little bit onto the lighter sections. And it's almost like a fold section there. I'll darken that in. Around, highlight that section where in the middle of the bow by darkening the edges. I darken that part in, and all of the bits underneath, behind, bent away for the bow, I'll darken those in as well. I'm darkening this bit in because it's kind of bending away a little bit, so I'll just darken that in, and of course I can lighten it again by going over with the lightest pink lilac colour. So I'm going to adjust the highlights again, and if I think any of these need lightened up, like this section, I'll go over that. It won't be as light as the other sections because I've got a darker colour underneath. Now I'm going to use my darkest purple and darken in round edges for the bow. So inside the bow would be darker, so I'm going to darken those in sections in. A little bit for the overlapping. Around that edge. That's overlapped, so I'll darken that in. Obviously that needs a lot more layers. Now for the buttons, I'm going to just darken in one edge to give it a little bit of a depth for each button. And the rest of the sections I'm going to use the darkest purple and just colour over them. It's all these squiggly lines, these sections connected to the buttons. Now with the other one I did do slightly lighter sections, but there wasn't much point, it didn't show up very well, so I'm not bothering with this boot. Starting it in. Now for the buttons I'm going to use the medium purple just to soften up that line a little bit. And go over this section just to lighten it slightly. With the medium purple. Realised there was a line there. I've mentioned about these detailed pieces of art. Quite often it's not until you start colouring sections in that you see things you've missed. Now all these sections need more layers, especially the bow, and so I'll do that and come back to this. Now I put 3 layers down, and I did a little bit of blending best I could with the bow and zest. It's a small area, so, and then I put another layer down of each colour, and I'm just trying to blend it out a little bit more now. I'm using my blender pencil because it is a small area. It's not easy to blend a narrow area like this with the cotton bud. It's too wide. I'll just go over the darker section with the medium purple again. So darken it in a little bit. And then darkening the highlights. And that's the boot finished for that section of this design. And I'll just zoom out. Get the old design in. There we go. For the overall effect. And I'm really pleased how that worked out. It is slightly different shading to the other boot, but however the boot was drawn slightly differently and the cat is in a different position, so they aren't going to look exactly the same. However, it's turned out quite nicely, and I like the way those two boots are shaded. This artwork, I always enjoy working with this artist's work because the animal designs are kind of quirky and fun, and it kind of works really well with vibrant colours or muted colours. They just look so nice. So I hope that this tutorial has been useful for anybody that's watched it. If you have any comments, please do leave them and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you have any feedback or any requests, and I'll look at those and see what I can do. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the near future with another tutorial.